Hello, and welcome to another fantastic episode of Furries in the Media, the series that reviews video clips based on how the furry fandom is represented. I'm your host, Abergwine, and for today's episode, WGN sports anchor Pat Tomasulo gets an inside look at the furries of Midwest Furfest 2015.
So do you guys know what furries are?
I don't really know.
No,
I'm not entirely sure, even after all. For what furries are basically, they're people who are interested in fictional animal characters with human personalities and characteristics.
All right.
So what a lot of furries will do sometimes is they'll create characters and then they'll make furry costumes to wear of those characters. And the whole thing sounded very fascinating to me, so I recently attended a furries convention.
That's a great definition of what furries are. He mentioned that furries will create characters before he mentioned that they will sometimes have costumes made of those characters. Not all furries have fursuits, and technically it's possible for a person to be a furry without even having their own fursona, but since it's more likely that any given furry will have a fursona than a fursuit, it's more accurate to describe furries as people who create their own animal characters, rather than only describing them as people who dress in animal costumes.
Explain to me exactly what furry fandom is.
If in real life you're shy and not very outgoing, that sort of thing, you throw on a costume, you're behind a mask.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a cat right now.
Yeah.
I'm a giant cat.
Damn right you are.
A lot of furries find that engaging in their character through roleplay or wearing a fursuit allows them to express themselves in ways that they normally can't or wouldn't in their daily lives.
I could ask you a question, be honest with me.
Sure.
You gotta be sweating your off in this thing, no? It's a bit warm, yeah.
Oh yeah, running around in a fursuit gets hot very quickly. Furry conventions usually provide a room for fursuiters to get out of their fursuits and cool down before heading back out into the rest of the convention space.
What's the difference between this and a mascot?
This is more personal.
Yeah, I agree. Mascots are sellouts.
Mascots are more for teams. We're kind of, you can say we're kind of mascots, but for our own selves and not for a whole team.
I have to agree with the folks he interviewed here. The biggest difference is that while a fursona represents one person, a mascot typically represents a larger group of people, whether that's a sports team or a company or even a corporation.
Am I pulling this off? I feel a little bit ridiculous.
You're doing all right.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You're not just saying that to humor me.
Most fursuits don't show the costumer's face, but there might have been several reasons why he wore this costume. It could be that this was the best costume they could find on short notice, or they may have even chosen it because of how ridiculous it looks in order to add some humor to this situation. It's also a possibility that the media policies of the convention required the news anchor to keep his face uncovered. But whatever the reason may be, I like the fact that it seems like the news anchor is just letting loose and having some fun with this report.
I feel like I'm not impressing anybody here, and I look ridiculous. You got an awesome costume.
The news anchor may not have the most impressive suit at the convention, but I do admire that he's able to let go of his inhibitions and just have some fun.
So a lot of hugging. People like the hugging there?
Very affectionate group, yeah.
Because I gotta believe you feel like no one knows who you are. I'm gonna hug as much as I can.
I personally don't think anonymity is the main reason why so many furries hug. Hugging just seems to be part of the culture in any furry meetup. These are people who generally don't get to see each other outside of these events, though they often stay in close contact. There also seems to be a sense of instant camaraderie when two furries meet. It's immediately knowing that you have a friend or an ally because you have this interest in common. If anything, I think the driving motivation behind why furries are so affectionate is the opposite of anonymity. It's finally being able to put a face to a name.
Smelled great, too.
Oh, that's nice.
Well, when you have people running around in enclosed space for a few days, even if they aren't all wearing heavy costumes, it's inevitably gonna smell. Please be sure to follow the 6-to-1 rule, guys. Good point, Sam. For every 24 hours that you are at a convention, you need to get at least 6 hours of sleep, 2 meals, and 1 shower.
So none of these are official mascots. People are creating their own stuff.
Yeah.
Wow.
Exactly. The furry fandom isn't really based on canon material. Sure, some furries find the fandom through watching movies like The Lion King, but not every furry is necessarily a fan of the film or has even seen it. If anything, I think it's reasonably safe to say that the one thing that all furries have in common is that they are ultimately fans of the concept of anthropomorphic characters.
Are there any women under those costumes?
About 11 of them.
Well, there is actually some truth to that statement. Various surveys have shown that the furry fandom has a high ratio of male to female members. Let's check out those review stats. Information accuracy is 100%, and the spirit of the clip is 83%, giving us an average score of 92%. And now time for my thoughts. At the beginning of this video clip, Pat Tomasulo seems to act like more of what you would typically expect of a news anchor reporting on a special assignment, but it seems like by the time he's put on his white tiger costume, he's let his hair down and he's just enjoying himself like any convention goer. By comparison, the presenters from the shows Valerio Dives Under and World of Weird both tried wearing fursuits for themselves in order to report on the experience of being in a fursuit. And even though the news anchor in this clip does put on his own costume, his report seems to focus on showing what furries are about and highlighting the experience of being in the environment that a convention space has to offer, more so than it focuses on what it's like to be in a fursuit. I also noticed that towards the beginning of the video, the answer that this guy gives for the question of what is a furry seemed oddly specific for such an open-ended question. But considering that the news anchor had just explained what furries are a few seconds prior, it would be redundant to show two similar answers for the same question. It seems that the way they circumvent this redundancy is by editing the footage so that the furry's response goes into more specific detail than the news anchor's original explanation. By doing this, the audience is supplied a requisite explanation of what furries are, and then the specific details are left to be explained in depth by people who are in the know, which in this case just happens to be furries. Well, that's it for today's episode of Furries in the Media. Have fun, stay awesome, bye-bye!